Working in Europe versus working in the USA. Today, Wolters World is going to break down exactly what no one talks about for us. Now, I know there are some huge differences, and they're usually the ones that people first think of when working in the USA versus Europe, and that's the income levels, but then also the trade-off for more time off and more benefits, of course, if you're inside of Europe. But I'm guessing we're probably going to have something that's maybe outside of the normal scope. And yeah, I'm excited to figure it out. Be sure to smash that like button, stick around to the end of the video, and I'll have a link in the description for Walter. He, like I said, great channel, great content if you're basically anywhere in the entire world.
Hey there, fellow travelers, or should I say fellow worker abroaders? Mark here with Wolters World, and today what I'll talk about are some of the differences that Americans notice when they come to work in Europe. Because a lot of people, their dream is, I'm going to move to Europe, I'm going to work there, and everything's going to be great. And it can be. I've actually lived in Europe for like 12 years, 13 years, and worked in a lot of different places. I worked in Lithuania, I worked in Portugal, I worked in Austria, I've gone all over, worked with the locals, been part of the team, had to pay the taxes and all those things. And I kind of want to go through some of the differences that American workers really kind of notice when they come to work in Europe. And sometimes you'll see the jokes that, oh, they get all the vacation time, haha. Yeah, that's true. But there's also some more serious things as well, okay? And I want to start with the one that people talk about the most. You have so much more time off when you work in Europe than when you work in the US. And I'm not just talking the vacation time they give you, I'm talking about just normal holidays they give you off, which is really nice because you can have a much better work-life balance when you're in Europe than in the US, okay? Because you just have more time to be you. You have more time to be with your family. You have no more.
Wait, you guys get more holidays than us? I mean, I know you get more time off, but more holidays? That's unfair. We really don't have too many federal holidays. I mean, the big ones, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day. I think that's it. There's probably one or two more.
To exist on your own without just having work be everything. And that's one of those nice things to it. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that people notice is just that amount of free time you do have. Because another thing that Americans notice when they come to Europe is work stops when work stops. If work is 9 to 5, you work 9 to 5. You can be mid-sentence, it's 5 o'clock, we're out. And no one holds it against you. There's no like, oh, we need to stay in for the team. No, we're pulling an all-nighter tonight. We need you to work an extra 10 hours this weekend. No, that stuff doesn't happen here. Like, I mean,
really?
It can happen, but it doesn't really happen. It's much more, oh, work's over. We didn't get it done. We didn't get it done. Moving on until Monday. I got stuff to do this weekend. Bye. And that's it. There's the boundaries that are here. Like, work is not everything.
I've worked so many different jobs that have done that. I've worked in restaurants, I worked construction and built bridges, did landscaping, I owned my own landscaping business. When I would do like in the restaurant industry specifically, it was like the manager would call you in and be like, hey, we have no one to cover tomorrow or in 2 days on Tuesday. So you're gonna have to come in and you start at 5. There's no like, oh, can I or can't I? They're like, no, you're working. Same thing with construction. They're like, we're working on Saturday next week. So just be prepared.
Don't get defined by it, which is really kind of cool. So you're not staying late, you're not working the weekends, you're only there when the hours you're supposed to work, which is really nice. And I will say another thing you notice is work is a bit slower because you don't have that going overtime, doing all this stuff. Things do take more time, and that's where a lot of Americans sometimes get frustrated with their European colleagues because like, oh, can we just knock this project out and move on? Oh, why are you taking so long? Why you have a lunch break? You have a coffee break? Can we just move through? And so they get that US get that frustrated with the kind of the slow work kind of stuff, or at least I would say the not hurry up and rush kind of thing. It's like, hey, we're gonna get it done when we get it done. Don't worry about it. And that's the thing is people, they're not worrying about it. It's not like work is everything. And I think that's a big thing to mention is you are not defined by your work in Europe. In the US, it's like, I live to work. And here in Europe, it's more like I work to pay for the fantastic food. I mean, it's just part of life, but that's not my life. Like, I honestly can say, like, when I did my PhD and master's and stuff, when I did it in Europe, when I look back on it, I don't think of it like I did my PhD in Portugal. It was, oh, I lived in Lisbon. Like, it was a
life. How young Walter is.
Separation and you're not defined by it. And that's one of those things that's really nice is that you can be you. Like, that's one of the things I really loved about working here. But one of the things that you'll notice that you might not like when you do work in Europe is you're not really truly friends with your coworkers. Now, you can be friendly with your coworkers and you'll probably more likely go get drinks on a Friday after work with people, but making that close friendship bond it's not as much there here in Europe because a lot of people, they live and work in the city
Really?
they grew up in. So they have friends since they were little kids. They're still friends with their buddy from kindergarten, first grade when they're 50 years old, 60 years old, 30 years old, 20.
Oh, yeah. See, I moved out of my hometown when I was 18. Actually, maybe almost 17-ish. About that age, though, I moved out of my hometown into another city, and all of my friends worked with me.
And therefore, you as a foreigner coming in, it's hard to get into a friendship circle because they already have their friends. And that's why sometimes expats end up leaving destinations that are super cool because they're lonely. You live in a city with millions of people and you don't have friends. And it is really tough. That's why I'm saying sometimes it's easier if you're going to be an expat in a place to be an expat in a Paris, a London, a Milan, a Berlin, where a lot of people have come and moved to, but not just international expats coming there, but also people from all over Italy move to Milan. People from all over Germany move to Berlin. So they're looking for friends as well. So it's a little bit easier to make friends. But that is one of those things is you might have it that you're not really super friends with your colleagues. And some of them you'll still call Herr Wolters after you've been working with them for 30 years. You're still Herr Wolters and not even on a first name sometimes. So do be aware of that. Now, it's not always.
I don't even have that many friends, period. I mean, I have friends. Most of my friends are back from, like he said, like from my hometown. And yeah, I mean, I'm married, 3 kids. It's like constantly going. I need to make more time for friends that are like actually in the city that I live in. I have a good handful of them, but not too many.
Can make friends, but I think it is one of those things that's important to mention because finding that good friend base when you first move abroad is really important so you have that social connection. Now, another thing that I will definitely tell you is true is if you come and work in Europe, you do not make anywhere near the same amount of money as you do in the U.S. Like, that's why a lot of Europeans like going to the U.S. because they make a lot of money. They can get more stuff. And so you do have that. And so when you think about it, maybe that's something when you think about your retirement, you're thinking about, hey, what am I going to do in the future? You have to think about those things. That's why when I have students like, oh, Mark, I want to go work in Europe. Like, all right, well, do you have college loans? Because you still got to pay them off. And you might make as much money to pay it off as fast as you do in the U.S.
Yeah.
But then they're like, yeah, but in Europe, we don't pay for our education. So it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, that's why there's a little bit of difference. But the pay gap is a real thing.
Cost of living is so much cheaper, though. I know that the average salary is much less. We've gone over all these stats in many European countries. Not all of them. Some of them are actually higher. But yeah, it would be ideal. I think I've said this 1,000 times, but it's like if you have a job in the U.S. that's remote and you can live in Europe or basically anywhere. And I know a lot of people do that, but what do they call them? Passport bros, right? It's usually dudes doing it.
Like between the U.S. and the EU, I mean, I won't lie to you. Like some places you do get paid better. Switzerland, Germany, England,
yeah.
You get paid really well. Like those are like, okay, comparable, you're doing okay, but go work in Portugal, go work in Eastern Europe. Like the money is, literally like a fraction of what you make in the U.S. So that's one thing I think is important to mention. However, you do get more with your money when you live in Europe, when you work in Europe, because you do have more benefits. Maybe you get paid a 13th month out of the year, or sometimes a 14th month out of the year. So those there. Maybe you get credits for childcare, or you get credits for, transportation allowances. So there's a little bit more like freebies in Europe that they give with you versus just, oh, look, a pizza party, thanks, boss, that you get in the U.S. And
they actually do that. Pizza parties are an actual reward system, or a reward inside the reward system in the United States jobs. I remember all the time I used to work in a garage door company, and it was actually my buddy's dad owned it, and they would do that. It's like, all right, pizza party from Costco. You guys have been doing a great job. Just buy a bunch of pizza for you. You're like, wonderful. I did pack a lunch though, so I'm probably just gonna eat my lunch.
Kind of looking at things in general. I know when I worked in Europe, I made less money than I did when I worked in the U.S., but I will say life in Europe is cheaper. I mean, living, existing, loving life is just cheaper in Europe than it is in the U.S. I mean, that's why I tell people all the time, if you're gonna go on vacation, once you get to Europe, it is cheaper to enjoy Europe than it is to enjoy, the U.S. I mean, I'm here in Torino, which is a relatively expensive city in Italy, and it's still cheaper than going to Orlando for me. Accommodation, going out to eat, it's better than
nice little
there,
spot,
right? And so you think about that, it's like, yeah, I don't make as much, but I don't need as much money as well because you are more in the city and more things are going on, right? And that's why it's important to mention your transportation to work is a lot different. It's not a car-based society in Europe. You are switching to public transportation. Now,
as all the
if
cars
you worked in the big city
behind.
in the U.S., probably you might already use the L in Chicago or the trains, in New York. But public transportation isn't a thing in the U.S. And when you come to Europe, it becomes integrated into your thing. So you're learning when I need to take the bus. When does that metro go by? I remember when I lived in Berlin, I knew exactly where my S-Bahns were going. And I'm like, I gotta get up that escalator. Like, it's definitely different than, I gotta sit in the traffic jam to get to work. Now, don't get me wrong. You can get a car, and believe me, you drive in Europe, you're gonna be in a traffic jam every day because there's not a lot of space. But also just to get into work is a different experience. And you'll notice there's a reason why in the US, our cars have nice cup holders and really good stereo systems because we sit in our cars all the time, we're drinking on our way. Whereas here in Europe, it's a shorter commute, but also with the crazy drivers and so many more packed things, you don't have time to change the channel. You don't have time to focus on what you're driving. Now, another money thing you'll notice is a bit different is taxes. Yeah, you're gonna pay a lot more taxes when you are here in Europe than you are in the US. In general, I'm just going to say that if you're making decent money, a lot more comes.
I gotta know what you guys think about taxes. We've covered taxes. We should just do a tax video. I think if I can find one. If you know one, send it to me and let me know. Do you guys like paying more taxes, or would you prefer to keep more of your money? Like, I know it goes into all your guys' systems, but I'm really curious where the people actually stand, not the systems that were set in place or like the governments that put them there. What do you guys actually think? And I'm sure some of you don't mind paying taxes, but your guys' tax systems in your countries are pretty crazy. I've seen some high numbers, up in the 60 or 50% tax brackets, which is mind blowing to me.
Especially if you're going to Sweden or Norway, Finland, taxes do get a bit higher. So that's one of those things you'll notice in your check that a lot more is missing when you're working in Europe, but you do get more stuff with it. So that's one of those things I do have relatively cheap healthcare or free public healthcare. Yeah, maybe the NHS isn't the greatest, but it's included with living here. So, I guess that's okay. But I will say, for the things you're not going to like, the biggest one that Americans, have a tough time adjusting to is European bureaucracy. I know we've got the DMV in the U.S., and that's our one example of, annoying bureaucracy.
Welcome. Don't shoot anything. Be careful.
Bureaucracy. I know we've got the DMV in the U.S., and that's our one example of, annoying bureaucracy, but oh my gosh. Try to get internet at your house. If you're in France, try to schedule a pickup of that Amazon package with a delivery driver. It's insane, right? The levels of bureaucracy, the level of things you have to go through, the hoops you jump through, the forms you sign, the stamps you need. And a lot of it's these catch-22s, hey, I need to get an apartment, but in order to get an apartment, I need a bank account. But in order to get a bank account, I need an apartment where I have an address. The bureaucracies here are such next level that for Americans, they get very frustrated with it. Now, another thing I think is important to mention about your workplace actually here in Europe is don't expect everyone to fall in line with the boss. The boss isn't necessarily God. Now, some parts of Europe, the boss is kind of like a godlike figure, but in general, you have a lot more discussion, a lot more consensus at work than in the U.S., where it's kind of well, the boss says this, so why are we even debating it? Here, you do have that open debate. And for some Americans, they're oh my gosh, he's talking back to the boss. What are you doing? You're going to get fired. No, you have much more discussion that's here. And I think one of the reasons
I actually like that a lot because I worked so many jobs where I saw something that maybe needed to be changed or try to give some type of feedback, but you don't want the boss to take it the wrong way as if you're telling them how to do their job or something that they're doing incorrectly. So you just don't really say anything at all. Interesting.
Why you have that is another difference is you don't worry about getting fired in Europe like you do in the U.S. I think I do a great job where I teach, but every year I'm still worried that I'm not going to get asked to come back the next year. I mean, it's very much a worrisome thing. You have the at-will work environment at the U.S. that you never know, right? Whereas in Europe, you have a lot more protections. You're not worried that you're going to get fired because your boss had a bad day, because your union is there for you, or there's protections by law that if you do get fired, they have to pay you for a year or two or something like that. Those kind of things make a difference. Mothers, they're not worried about having kids because they have protection for maternity leave, and they get paid maternity leave, paid paternity leave. I mean, those kind of things make a difference. So you do feel more comfortable, you can share your true feelings about a project. Hey, what do we need to do? And so you have a different mentality. And also, I think another difference is the mentality of the workforce. It's not as much grind and the hustle and I need my side hustle kind of stuff like you have in the U.S. It's much more of that laid-back attitude. attitude, that laissez-faire attitude when it comes to work. And then I want to mention one thing that I did notice when I worked in Europe is you're not going to have as much diversity in your workforce here in Europe as you do in the US. Just because Europe in general, like you're in Italy, it's full of Italians, so there's a lot more Italians, a lot less diversity in the workers than you have in the US, which is a melting pot of places. Now, if you go to like bigger cities, yeah, if you're in Milan or Paris or London, you're going to have more of that. Like the UK has much more diversity, France has much more diversity, but that's one of those things when you work, you'll notice that there's not a lot of diversity sometimes in your workplace when you're here in Europe. So if you've ever been an expat working in Europe, tell us, where have you worked? What was your experience? And what are some of the differences that you had? And don't worry, I'm going to do a video on this.
All right, guys, really, I love his stuff. He gives such a good, like, insight. What do you say? He lived there for like 13 years, or he is still living in Europe? Walter, I don't know exactly. I see you in the States sometimes, make videos there as well. So fantastic. I enjoyed it. I work remotely and work for myself, so it doesn't really affect me too much, but I guess it would if I ever did get a place in Europe and I had to handle some of the bureaucracies or paying some of the taxes. It's good info. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and head out of here. Appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.